we're going to continue on this B-Side 203 episode from MediaMonarchy.com with all the latest from one of our newest sites in the kingdom, and it's called holyhexes.com. And we're just going to call it Pop a Culture. And I have to admit, I stole that name from a blog that I don't really think exists anymore. A guy named Tim Boucher used to run it. But I'm going to take it. Pop a Culture, bunkers, kaboom, and emotional collapse. End of the world threats stirs interest in Scottish nuclear bunker. This is coming from Bloomberg.com. And anytime I think of underground bunkers, I, of course, always make reference to the Greenbrier, the former fallout military runaway shelter in my home state of West Virginia. There's a new indie film that debuted at Sundance, I believe. It's called The Sound of My Voice, and the film portrays documentarians investigating a cult and then falling under the sway of its, of course, charismatic leader. We also have another film called The Right, which you may have heard of. It's playing at the mall down the street. But within this article from the Los Angeles Times, they mention the fact that there are at least 14 Vatican-certified exorcists working in, and I add on, the U.S. Yet another film. This one's called Kaboom from filmmaker Greg Araki. I've seen some of his earlier movies, like The Doom Generation, and I saw a recent one that's streaming on Netflix called Smiley Face. But this new one, Kaboom, End of the World? Maybe. First, sex. That's the review from the New York Times. If we move to ShowbizSpy.com, Lisa Marie Presley undergoing emergency treatment for a frightening emotional collapse. And where would she do something like that? Of course, at the cult of Scientology. Our last note is several months old, but it had been something sitting in my bookmarks. I had never posted up, but now, of course, we have holyhexes.com, and this will be the home for these kinds of stories. This one comes from io9.com, how ghosts, superstitions, and vampires have been used for psychological warfare. And, of course, we'd also want to throw in religion as well. Some of these articles I did pick up from what I think is the indispensable cultnews.net. You can subscribe to that feed, and their feed is on the side of holyhexes.com. The other story we have from thestatesman.com, aging radio evangelist says the end of the world is near. Again. Soon it will be spring again. The leaves will turn green. The bluebonnets will flower. Or trumpets will blast, graves will open, and Earth will begin a 5-month descent to its fiery end. Radio evangelist Harold Camping can hardly wait. May 21st, mark your calendar, save the date. The return of Christ, coming soon, May 21st, 2011. And you can see there on the billboard, wecanknow.com. And we have covered this story several months ago on MediaMonarchy.com, but of course, as the date approaches, more news is going to spill out about it. May 21st, he asserts, is Judgment Day, when this world will be a horror story beyond anything we can imagine. A fixture on Christian airwaves around the world, Harold Camping, age 89, is exhorting all who are listening to make ready for Jesus' triumphal return, whose precise date, he says, God has revealed to him with fantastic proof in the Bible. Of course, Camping has missed the date for the end of the world before, having previously forecast that the apocalypse would be in 1994. Apparently there was a book he wrote called 1994, ? And I can't find any copy of it anywhere online. Lately, many other end-of-timers have been fixated on a doomsday date of December 21st, 2012, my mom's birthday, when the long count calendar of the ancient Maya ends, and they say the world with it. According to Camping, there won't even be a 2012. His website displays that number with a red slash through it. I will also throw out another mention of the fact that I learned recently that the long count calendar that, of course, ends December 21st, 2012, began in what year, it escapes me off the top of my head, but it starts on August 11th, my birthday. Enough about birthdays. We're going to move to cyberspacewar.com for the remainder of this 203b episode from MediaMonarchy.com. Cyberspace War, yet another site in the Media Monarchy kingdom. And we'll first do the DEF CON. On Food World Order, we call it a binge and purge. On Holy Hexes, for now, we're going to call it Papa Culture, but here on cyberspacewar.com, we'll call it DEF CON. Congress Connections and the Company. Senate Bill 3480, Protecting Cyberspace as a National Asset of 2010. The bill to give the president the right to shut down the net is back in Congress. Isn't that appropriate now as we look around the world? And it's not just Obama. It, of course, would be any future president, whether that's Palin or Paul or no one. Further down the disgusting list, the Department of Justice seeks to have all web surfing tracked. That's from Raw Story. Meanwhile, Mozilla proposes a Do Not Track addition to Firefox. That's from ibtimes.com, and I don't believe they've rolled that out yet. Google comes under fire for their secret relationship with the NSA. It's quite an open secret, as H.G. Wells would say. Apple hires a military-grade security chief. Of course, that's only slightly a pun. It is a military guy. More on that from the Inquirer.net. Under the irony file, Mark Zuckerberg's Facebook page has been hacked. More on that from the LA Times. Social networks under attack as tide of cyber skepticism sweeps the U.S., with reports and statistics and studies coming out. This from The Guardian, that social networks don't connect people. They actually isolate them. And it's kind of tough to disagree on some level. And here it is. We've got it from Threat Level, and we've got it from The Guardian, and we've got it from redactednews.blogspot.com. First, the one from Threat Level. Report says the U.S. can't actually link Bradley Manning to Julian Assange. Then the police arrest 5, and that number may be larger than that. I know there are many more doors knocked down in this anonymous sweep, anonymous being the name for the hackers who have went after Amazon and PayPal and all of those sites post-Cablegate. We're in this post-Cablegate world now. But an article from the aforementioned Redacted News is a large post showing a letter to the editor of RockCreekFreePress.com. And it's from Webster Tarpley. So my man Jeff at Redacted News has it posted up. WikiLeaks and Assange, limited hangouts in the service of the CIA. A letter to the editor of the Rock Creek Free Press from Webster Tarpley, where he was dismayed to note that Rock Creek named Assange as their Person of the Year. But you can see in the photo right there, Assange, whistleblower or intelligence operative. Limited hangouts in the service of the company being, of course, the nickname for who we've already mentioned several times here, our fine friends at the Central Intelligence Agency. So we're going to go back just over a week, and perhaps even a little bit more, for a clip from Russia Today featuring Webster Tarpley that gets into just some of these matters that we've discussed right here. WikiLeaks and Assange, limited hangouts in the service of the company.
Opposition to the Kremlin pleading with the US for help. It's almost a throwback, isn't it, to Cold War days. What's your take?
It is, and generally speaking, the U.S. intentions are not realistic. They're trying to organize an anti-Putin campaign. Let me say, most importantly, at the CIA and at the State Department right now, you have a manic fit which is generated by the success of the United States in overthrowing the government of Tunisia with the help of WikiLeaks and Julian Assange. The word at Langley and Foggy Bottom is that thanks to Assange and WikiLeaks, the United States has been able to capture the attention of a new generation of nihilists across the world, and that with this you can bring down every government in the Arab world. But of course, why stop there? Color revolutions had been losing their vim, They had failed in Iran, they'd failed in Lebanon, they were discredited and rolled back in Ukraine, and in Georgia, of course, also discredited. But now they think they can relaunch the model of the color revolutions. And I'm afraid what we see in these papers is the Russia director of the National Security Council, Michael McFaul, who is interested in grooming Boris Nemtsov as a candidate to stop Putin from becoming president again in 2012, which McFaul obviously thinks is what's going to happen. And it seems to me the gaggle of people that they have working for them are not going to be adequate to the task.
But these latest cables also showing that Washington may have cooled its boots a bit with respect to what you've just said, no?
No, I think I think that would be a superficial reading. We look at McFaul. McFaul is someone who goes back quite a ways in Russia. His history in the 1990s was to support everything that Yeltsin did because the U.S. was supporting Yeltsin. If it was shock therapy, that was democratic. If it was sending tanks to shoot up the parliament, that became democratic. In Ukraine, when you had these kleptocrats coming in, Yushchenko, Timoshenko, for McFaul, that was also democratic. And now he looks at this group of opposition, which includes skinheads and national Bolsheviks, neo-fascists in every way. He says, we're going to somehow get these people together and do something in the 2012 presidential election, thanks to the fact that we have WikiLeaks and Assange on our side, because that's what we've proven in Tunisia. I would read that as the mentality of McFaul.
Hang on a minute. We're in the age of that reset button being so off-pressed. We're in the age of the new START agreement coming in. Why do you think the US is still doing business with the opposition? What does Washington have to gain?
Well, of course, this I think in many ways was illusory. I mean, what we see here is that this is the usual interference in the sovereign affairs of independent states. And another one of those WikiLeaks things shows that there's still a military war plan, essentially for a war with Russia, based on the Baltic states and the area around Kaliningrad. So really not that much has changed. But what has changed from the point of view of these people is the idea that they can get a second chance. Just a word about Nemtsov. This, of course, was one of the young wolves of the Chernomyrdin Yeltsin era. And if you look at what he did, every conceivable disaster in the book of economics, he visited hyperinflation, a bubble, a crash, nomenclatura, privatization, the coming of the oligarchs. All of this is the handiwork of Nemtsov, and he now thinks that he should make a comeback. And really, McFaul and Nemtsov may be the only people who believe this is possible. But again, in this new post-Tunisia atmosphere, Foggy Bottom and the State Department and the CIA believe that everything is possible.
We haven't got long, Webster, but following on from what you've just been saying there, then what do you think the future is for non-parliamentary opposition here in Russia? Where do you think it's going to go?
When you look at this opposition, you'd have to say, what do they stand for? They seem to be a group of people who are united only by their hatred of Prime Minister Putin. They have, you know, de-Putinization is the only thing they have to offer. They seem to wait around for murders to occur and then blame that on Putin, you know, kind of a knee-jerk reaction. I don't see an economic program. I don't see anything constructive. I don't see anything that could help the future of a great nation. So therefore, I don't see why people would be interested. The difference, I think, is in Russia, the opposition is an embarrassment. Sometimes here in the U.S., we think our government is an embarrassment. But maybe the Russian opposition needs to retool, to get some actual positive ideas and not simply be the long arm of a foreign power.
Webster Tully, really good to have your take on it tonight. Thanks for joining us on the line from Washington, D.C., as you are.